you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, great topic. What happens if you're a supervisor and you make a mistake? I mean, do you take responsibility of that mistake? I'm sure there's a lot of frontline here right now that's saying no, they don't. But today we're going to me and Connie are going to discuss what you should do if you are a supervisor and you make a bad call, especially on the safety and security side, the medical side, decisions that have to be really done on the fly. I think it's going to be a great topic. The suggestion came our way through Facebook Messenger. I guess the person that wrote the message is dealing with a supervisor right now that doesn't take accountability. But I think it's going to be a great topic, and I have none other than the renowned author. Renowned or renowned? Could you be known again? What is it? Is it renowned or renowned? Renowned.
Renowned, I think. But that ain't me.
So that means so let me ask you a question. And obviously we know it's Connie right now. So you're given a noun, but it's not good enough, so we renown you again? I don't know this guy. All right. So anyway, the renowned author of The Cage was her cocoon, Connie Alleyne.
Oh gosh. Hi everybody. Connie Alleyne here. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I'm also the podcast host of The Fly Behind the Wall. And I am the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon. I'm remembering that comment that I sent you that write-up that someone sent me where they say every time you say the name of your book. So it made me laugh just now as I thought about it. So yeah, great to be here. It's always good to have these wonderful conversations. I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes because we have no idea where it's going to go.
Like usual. Yeah. Like usual. And guys, we're talking about someone that motivates us, actually. Her name is Rochelle. She works for Andy. And she loves what we do. So you know what? We'll dedicate the show to her. I'm sure she will watch it, and then she'll message us both to say how much she appreciated the show we did. So she likes when you say The Cage was her cocoon, your cocoon, and she likes when I say Connie. Or no, hit that bell. One of the two. Bell. Hit that bell. So for Rochelle, hit that bell. Guys, so we're going to go to our sponsor, but when we come back, we are going to be discussing, if you're a supervisor, how do you take accountability? And maybe we'll talk about certain reasons why someone may not want to take that accountability. Doesn't mean it's right, but we do like to kind of, wear their shoes a little bit and see where it comes from. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks for you, brave men and women that work in corrections, so please subscribe, interact, engage, hit that bell. I'm nervous now. Hit that bell. There's a bunch of other stuff you could do. Oh, have my book, Inmate Manipulation Decoded. Don't forget, guys, it's out in the market. Links in description. I can go to our sponsor. We'll come back and we'll discuss the topic. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
And we are back. That was a very rough outro. I got nervous. I forget the order there. So kind of, this is a very interesting topic. I think that there probably are a lot of people on the front line that may work with supervisors who don't take that accountability at that next level. I'm thinking maybe for one reason, and again, none of this is right, but just to kind of get the perspective. One reason is definitely when you become a supervisor, there is that higher level of responsibility. So a mistake that you make doesn't just affect you, it could affect the people that you oversee. But have you ever worked with a supervisor that didn't take accountability for the mistakes they made?
Yes, I have. And, it's tough because, I think so at the point where I was not a supervisor or administrator, it's kind of hard to not want to be like, yo, how are you not going to take responsibility? You told me to do this, right? But, you try to remain professional and not kind of get pulled out of character. But at the end of the day, I think sometimes based on the consequences, you may be less willing to fall on the sword, right? And more willing to speak up and be like, hey, listen, this is what I was instructed to do. I was following a direct order, and this was the outcome, as opposed to completely just owning the decision. But I think that when there are situations like that, the mark of a good manager is that manager's going to say, hey, I'm responsible for my team, right? There's going to be this accountability. And if anyone's going to fall on the sword, we'll fall on it together, right? There is no just throwing someone under the bus and then you walk away and act like there's no big deal, because it is a big deal. Because at that point, your staff is never going to trust you. And if they do, it's going to be on some real shaky grounds, right? Like, it's not going to be like you have their full respect or their full trust or full support in anything that you do anymore. Because, you more likely going to be like, well, I can't follow that person. I don't even know what they're telling me. I don't know if what they're telling me is the right thing. So like your whole credibility kind of gets shot, especially when you don't take accountability. Because there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I messed up. Right? I made a mistake.
Right. I think a lot of it comes to the surface, especially during the reports, because I would like to think that most facilities operate where the initial report is written by the person directly involved in the incident. So let's say the officer or the medical staff member, but then on the back should be a supplement from the supervisor. So if there's something that's written in the report that could point to the supervisor may really read that. And then when they go to supplement and add their narrative, the narrative may have a bit of a twist. Now, I don't know if the front line will see that unless it gets brought to a higher level where they're investigating a certain incident that, would require everybody going over their reports. And did you know that when you did this, the supervisor is saying they didn't give you that order? I mean, an example could even be a supervisor telling you to leave your post for something, and you're working a post that requires constant vigilance. And then when something happens in that unit because you stepped off, well, then the supervisor has to step up and say, well, I've given him that order or her that order. And hopefully it was based on emergent reasons. But I think a lot of it comes from that original report. And guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would like to think that most facilities do operate like that. You have the initial report from the person directly involved, and then on the back or somewhere connected, something from their direct supervisor that should complement and not stand in conflict. But again, once you see things on paper and they start to get challenged, I could actually see people that are in supervisory roles. I'm not going to say leadership roles because we're doing a whole book on that, me and you, Connie. But people that are supervisors that may fold under the pressure and start protecting themselves in that CYA move, cover your own ass. And again, like you said, you do that. You do that once. You will never get the respect back. Correct, Connie?
That is correct. I'm like, you only get one chance to do that. And you never, and the word travels, right? Because then people are talking about how you just crapped on your employee, right? I've actually seen that going through like arbitrations. You've got the union involved now, you've got the employee, you've got the manager, and it's documented that this was the direction the manager is given. And then you got the manager sitting right there saying, no, I didn't say that. But you've got other employees who've written in the report that they got the direction from the manager, and those are really just crappy spaces to be in, because you see the backpedaling, you see a manager who might have misrepresented themselves. And I would like to think that not everyone's malicious. Sometimes there are instances where what I think I saw or what I recall at the time that I'm writing a report, or if you're distracted and like you're just trying to get it done, which is why I think it's really important when these incidents happen that people write right away as opposed to after, taking time and whatever. But, I think it's really one of those times where, I don't want to, I guess I wouldn't want to just say leadership, but I would say that we may see things a little differently. And I think, you know, a best practice can be that, you know, if there is a conflict, I don't necessarily agree that the conflict should be in the report writing. I think like if I'm the manager who now has the collectively all the reports, and there's something that I see there's a conflict or whatever, I mean, it may not necessarily be my role to do that, but I think it's important that, you know, there's transparency in that. So even after I write my report, if I sit with the team and be like, hey, so, you know, here's something I thought was a little different. Oh, you know, we may not have seen eye to eye on some things or whatever, but I think it's not pretending like it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think when people become supervisors, they may be under the impression that they can't make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. You also should be hopefully put in an environment that promotes growth, which means that it's a trusting environment, which is not out to bury you the moment you make a mistake. It's more out to understand why the mistake occurred. Sometimes, and I guess we can start with this first, is that if the environment itself doesn't allow you to admit you made a mistake, which means it's quick to discipline, quick to punish without really getting an understanding, well, you're not just going to see that with the supervisor. You're going to see that also with the officers, but in my mind, the frontline individuals. But in my mind, that's also a culture. I mean, you could have a supervisor that was once an officer that would willing to be taking up responsibility and accountability, but then they've been working in this environment for so long where it's just quick to punish without understanding why those decisions were made. And then eventually that person shifts into a person that is afraid to take accountability. Now they become this supervisor with those same levels of fear, but just at a higher level, if you will. Mm-hmm. So again, and we're going to try to look at it from every perspective. The environment has to allow for mistakes to happen. And guys, what I mean by that is before you go quick to discipline, know that we're dealing with human behavior and we're not going to be perfect. But if we sit there and are just quick to discipline 100% of the time, regardless of getting an understanding of why a choice was made, then you're going to find out one thing is people are going to hide their mistakes. But like we just mentioned with the supervisor in the front line, in an effort to protect my own ass, we become divisive. Connie mentioned it. Union versus union. You know, you're going to have everybody at the table at war with each other because they're only worried about themselves because we promoted an environment that really is cover your own ass. Would you agree with that, Connie, for the first time?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because I feel like there's so much to be learned in our environment if we only allow for it to be a learning environment, right? Like, I mean, I feel like there's no situation that's the same as the one that happened yesterday. And so when you have the understanding of all the moving parts, what was the context in which this decision was made, I feel like you would be less likely to be looking to just point the finger and then hand down the discipline. But like, if you could actually put yourself in the position that the other person was in, and so here are all the things that were going on at the time that that person was considering as they were making this decision, even if they made a mistake, they made the decision based on whatever information they had at the time. And then you kind of like you said, as far as human behavior, you kind of add into that the human emotions, right? Like, what was that person feeling at the time? If they were afraid, were they angry, like whatever those emotions were that could have been driving a particular decision. I feel like, you know, sometimes corrections can be very unforgiving. You know, it's just kind of like, oh yeah, that's what you did. And like all of a sudden, like the hammer comes, as opposed to really us trying to take a look and understand, like, how did we even get here? Because I think the bigger lesson from these sort of situations is how do we make sure it doesn't happen again? Right? Not so much just the, look what you did, here's the consequence, but were there some variables that we did have control over where, you know, something fell through the cracks, or there was some sort of lapse in our policy, in our procedure that kind of led to this thing happening.
And that kind of, again, what you're saying goes directly with the pressure you put on the supervisor as well. If it is unforgiving to that supervisor, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some supervisor leaders who will step up regardless and take the hit on the chin. but we're still not providing the right atmosphere for that. So I actually give higher level of kudos for those who deal with the pressure and are still able to take onus and do what they can to, I guess it's trust over pride. You know, I'm willing to sacrifice pride for trust any day of the week. You know what I mean? I mean, you said it too right before. I mean, I want my people to trust me. So regardless of the pressure I'm facing, I know in the long run, hopefully that pressure is temporary, but how I'm seen by my front line is going to be permanent. And like you said, it's do it once. I mean, do it once. So I think part of it, again, is the atmosphere, the pressure that the supervisor could face. But also, and I guess we'll touch on this now, Connie, is the trust versus the pride. I mean, am I willing to admit I made a mistake? Because maybe I'm a prideful individual who literally became a supervisor because I feel I'm perfect. I feel that I want that 100% level of authority, because there are people out there like that, you know, and God forbid they make a mistake. Oh, no, not me. I never make a mistake because I'm the supervisor. No, we all make mistakes. So now what happens here is their pride supersedes the trust that they need to have from their people to be more effective. What's your thinking on that, the pride versus the trust?
So, I mean, the first thing that came to mind when you said it was just that, so when these situations happen, like, I feel like we all are going through our own life lessons, right? And so I feel like many times that very prideful person just needs one more of these situations to happen in order to help get them grounded, right? And so, you know, as much as they may not want to take accountability for whatever it is that happened, oftentimes these situations help bring them down a notch and sort of put them in that mental mindset that you're like everyone else, right? We're all human. We may come to work and put our best foot forward every day. We do make mistakes. That's just a reality of us, who we are as individuals. I think so when the pride comes in, like, I don't do well when people are just so prideful, you know, like, I'm more so, I can relate to the person that's like, yo, like, I've had people come and it's like, Miss Alleyne, I fucked up, right? Like, I could deal with that more than you telling me everything's great and then I discover that you messed up on something, right? Because if we have created this environment where people feel they have to hide, there's probably more stuff hidden than not. And when we start digging, we start to sort of uncover all of the stuff that probably should have been done one way and wasn't, right? So for me, I would take that person who's willing to come forward any day as opposed to the prideful person, because at least that person who's coming forward is either they're prepared for whatever the possible consequence is, right? It's kind of like, listen, it is what it is. I messed up. I can anticipate there will be some sort of backlash for whatever it is. And I'm willing to hold myself accountable or be held accountable. And I think the other thing with that person who comes forward is that person is willing to learn from that. Like, because if I can identify that I made a mistake, there's a lesson being learned in the midst of that. And that person will probably never do that again. So I think for us, we have to support when they do make mistakes, because the reality is that lessons are being taught that we haven't taught them. So I think there's a level of accountability we have to take simply because a situation was created that we didn't fill that knowledge gap, or else the mistake might not have been made if we did, right? And I think when we can take our steps back, that's also something we can note. Like, by the way, this is something we need to add to training. This is something that we need to add to the next in-service so that this doesn't happen again. But I think when we are in this space of blame, or we're in this space of just consequence, we kind of lose the opportunities to really teach and help the staff develop.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, because what people may not realize is that mistakes, you know, obviously they do create growth. I like to think the majority of mistakes that I've made in my career, I would know not to do again because I went through it, as opposed to hearing about it. Something about going through it kind of stops you from doing those mistakes again. And you're right, you know, for those that are prideful, or for those that are afraid to admit it, because of maybe pressure, or maybe they're just cowards in the long run. I mean, there could be many reasons. The point is then that we could be stopping an atmosphere where growth could be happening, because, you know, I would like to think of, let's say I make a mistake, right? And let's say for some reason they decide that this mistake is worth teaching in the academy. I would like to think that at some point, I know this may sound a little weird. I don't know if it's kind of like an oxymoron here, but it's a valued mistake. You know what I mean? Because if it's being taught in the academy, that means I'm probably not the only one who would have made that mistake in my position. And I'm hoping that when they teach it, it's not a hindsight bias thing where this imbecile, blah, blah, blah. No, that's, you know, because at that point, if I'm an imbecile, then mostly everybody should know it then. So why are we teaching it? You know, I'm assuming for this stuff that gets elevated to that academy level, it's a heightened mistake where there's an understanding of the choice that supervisor made, even though it wasn't ideal. And now next time when this situation occurs, we're able to kind of understand why he made that choice or she made that choice, but then also realize why it was wrong. So I'd be willing to make a mistake and be put out there if the mistake is going to be used to help people better themselves. So if I make a mistake and you want to put it on Front Street because, again, it's something that could happen to anybody else, then put my name out there, do whatever you got to do, because in the end, if it helps somebody else, I'm good with that. There's no pride in that. There's just, we're all human and we're bound to make a mistake. But if you're going to approach it in a manner that belittles and degrades, but then still feel that I want my name thrown out there in an effort to teach somebody else, that to me is a bit of a conflict. But I mean, Connie, I'm sure that, you know, I mean, in the jobs that we have, we make a lot of split-second decisions, and there are going to be decisions that, you know, are not going to be the best. And if someone has to go back and say, hey, Gans, we understand where you're coming from when you made that choice, but be mindful, next time this happens, why don't we try doing it this way? I'm good with that. Constructive, teach me. You want to teach everybody else? That's fine. There's no pride here. But in the end, I think that's something we didn't think about right off the bat, was that these mistakes could be used later to prevent those mistakes from happening again. But it requires someone to step up and say, hey, I did make that mistake, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just even thinking about today, like when you were ready to leave, right? It was the end of your tour, you're ready to go home, and you've got the family member on the phone, right? It pretty much, you could have just said, we'll take care of it tomorrow, right? But that's not what you did, right? And I'm thinking, suppose you chose to take care of it, we take care of it tomorrow, and then something happens overnight, right? And then it's like, damn, this was on my plate. I could have taken care of it. I should have taken care of it. I could have avoided this thing from happening, right? I feel like that's like, those are those decisions that you make, right? Like you're weighing out, all right, my wife's home, the kids are home. Like there's all these other things that could have swayed you making a decision one way or another. And I feel like if someone didn't know all the information that was there, right? Because today was a busy day. Like if you guys don't know, Gangi and I talk all the time, right? So today was a busy day. You had tons of conflicts and priorities, right? There was all this stuff happening, but then you've got this family member who's called you multiple times and you want to see this thing through. You could have not talked to the family member, right? There were other things you could have did, but you made it a priority. And I feel like, as a leader, as a manager, like those are the different things that kind of get thrown on us and we have to decide, right? And whether there's a negative outcome or not, we've made a decision. And so if something were to happen, you would hold yourself accountable, like, damn, I should have took care of that, right? And in the meantime, if you said, oh yeah, but that person left work early and she wasn't there when I called, right? The accountability is different. You're kind of shifting it to the person as opposed to owning it for yourself. And so your people who are looking at you, they're the ones that are like, yo, yeah, he stayed, he took care of this. It didn't matter that the person who's responsible in classifications went home already, right? And I feel like that's the way we show our team that we've got their back, right? That's the way we show our teams that we're in it with you. Like, I could have left, but I didn't, right? Because I'm here with you and I want to make sure whatever we got to get taken care of gets taken care of.
You know how powerful what you're saying is, because also, guys, I want you guys to listen to this. One thing about promoting a CYA atmosphere is you're going to get a lot of people the moment you reach out to them, because let's say there was a mistake that happened, everybody's going to be more worried about saying it wasn't me than fixing the mistake. You know, I didn't have that concern. You know, I had people that are willing to get right into it because they know I'm not out to chase anybody. You know, just help me out, because at the end, I want to commit to whatever this action is that's needed. I'm not chasing around worried about, you know, who's at fault, blah, blah, blah. Because again, if we could fix it, it's not that big of a deal, you know, and we were able to fix it. But if you promote this environment that really is CYA, then the moment you mention there's a mistake, no matter how small that mistake is, people are quick to say, it wasn't me, wasn't me, it wasn't me. And you wind up spending, you know, a half an hour just dealing with the it wasn't me's, but you haven't moved forward with the what needs to be done, you know. But Connie, you're spot on with that. You know, I mean, you could be that type of person who, and again, guys, this does affect our supervisors, because I'm going to level up, you know, because again, you know, I could deal with that same thing. But if I'm going to my supervisors, you know, and let's say there's a mistake, I don't want to spend all day, it wasn't me, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. All I'm asking is, can we fix the problem? And I really don't care at this point, because it's not that big of a deal as long as I'm able to correct it. But have you ever dealt with the it wasn't me's and then just,
you're laughing? Of course. Who hasn't dealt with the it wasn't me? You know, it's like, okay, here it is. I'm now looking at logbooks. I'm going back to see who signed what, who didn't sign what, trying to figure out, because everyone's pointing fingers at each other. That's a waste of my time. It's a waste of everybody's time, quite frankly, because this issue is now lingering until we've discovered who it was, right? It's going to kind of take up everyone's mental space for a little while until we've come to some resolve. So that wasn't me. It does no good for anybody, not for the manager, not for the staff, not for whoever's on the receiving end or waiting to see who discovers who it really was, right? You know, I go to the warden with the it wasn't me. He's like, Connie, what the hell? Like, you know, because it's one of those things that could hold up something operationally, all the it wasn't me's, right? And then on the back end, if we are holding things up. So for example, we would have all of our trips scheduled out in the morning. So if we've got offenders going to whatever specialty appointments, you know, we get them all set up and ready to go. And so for some of them, of course, they've got to have breakfast going out in the morning. And some appointments don't allow for you to have breakfast prior to a medical appointment. So we end up sending like a breakfast, but they can't eat it until after the appointment's over. And so there was a point where like the kitchen is saying, we sent it. The officer saying, no, that you didn't send it. You got the nurse saying, well, they put it on a nursing station, but they didn't label it. We didn't know whose food it was. It's like, okay, so clearly there was some sort of breakdown in who was responsible for what, but did the inmate eat? Right? Like, because that's all I want to know. Was the inmate on the bus all day and didn't eat, or did they get something to eat? Right? Because we could work out the breakdown. We could put a label on the breakfast. We could do something. But for us to spend half of a day trying to figure out who didn't do what, that's a waste of time. And so I think the more we're willing to say like, hey, listen, it was sitting here. I didn't realize it was for the inmate. I didn't send it out with him when he went to go get on transportation that morning. Like, okay, let's move on. We need to fix it. We know how to fix it. And then we'll just, you know, but no more of that. Give them a double dinner. I mean, there's always way to work it out. You know, like it's funny. Look, walk in and like, hey, this inmate didn't get his orange juice for breakfast. Gangi, it wasn't me. It wasn't guys. Just someone give him an orange juice. That's all it is. But again, I think more of it's an atmosphere, you know, that gets created, and then we have to ask ourselves, why is this happening? Why are we spending so much time figuring out who's at fault as opposed to actually solving the problem? You know, and again, we're talking about the daily routine stuff. You know, obviously there's some emergent stuff that is going to require some level of accountability and possibly some
action, disciplinary. Hope, I don't want to say hopefully, but I say disciplinary over punitive, because disciplinary I like to think is an effort to cultivate and learn. Punitive maybe a little bit more aggressive, because we've exhausted that level of teaching and learning. But having said that, if you look at mistakes within the foundation of I can learn from, then that should open up people to saying, hey, that was me. And that actually does promote a more trusting environment. But it really does start with the supervisor. If the supervisor makes a mistake and the supervisor steps up and admits to making that mistake, then I think it also will encourage others that they supervise to do the same, as opposed to me saying I haven't. Now I can't trust you. Now I'm going to start hiding my stuff. So think about the culture you set, by stepping up, admitting that you're at fault, for whatever the concern would be, and then seeing your people. Because here's the funny thing. I think that when you step up in this profession, when you make a mistake, and by the way, I want to mention something real quick. This is important to me too. The integrity comes from not when it's been picked up and then you admit to it. The integrity comes from when you admit to it before anybody else knows about it. That's the key. Like, oh, you got me, now I'll admit to it. Nah, that's still not the trust I need. I like the people that just step up and say, hey, Gange, I made a bad call today. I just want to tell you what it is. And maybe there's a chance that I would never find out about it. You don't know. But that's someone I trust, believe it or not. Some people say, well, but he admits it. There's a level of integrity there, a level of trust there that we need in this department, especially when it comes to greater level concerns, safety and security. I mean, I don't want to have to chase after somebody to find the truth. I'm hoping that they come to me the moment it happens so we can react together as a team, move forward and build an understanding of why, in the hopes that doesn't happen again. But I think that some people feel that, well, I'm going to be judged for that. If you feel that way, then I would go back and look at the environment and what are we cultivating here, guys? Are we cultivating an environment that, really pushes judgment without understanding? Or are we cultivating an environment that encourages people to come up? But Connie, and this is very rare. It's very rare. But it's very rare to find someone who will admit to a fault, not because it was pointed out or it was discovered, but because they're doing it for the right reasons, even if there was a chance that it wouldn't be discovered. And here's the sad thing. Some people actually look at the individual, you're an idiot, you're throwing yourself under the bus. Yeah, but you know what? Again, it goes to the atmosphere. Because if there's a supervisor that they have that is strict to do that, then you're stopping that person from being honest and coming up to you. But I'll guarantee you, if you made a mistake and you're discussing whether you should bring it up or not, there'll be people that will say, yeah, you should, just in case, but you definitely should bring it up. Go see Connie or go see Gangi. Because of who we are, because of what we represent and the culture, I like to think that we have or we create in our facilities, we welcome that integrity. So guys, think about it from that way. You get supervisors that may want to come in and do the right thing, but you could reinforce this negative atmosphere of no trust. And now that person who has integrity starts second guessing whether they should admit when they made a mistake or not. What's your thoughts on that, Connie?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that we usually go for the social proof, right? We want to know that we are doing what our peers would have done, or we're responding in a manner that aligns with the way our peers would respond. I think, when you talk about the person who's just going to come forward because they realize they made a mistake, whether or not someone's going to figure it out, find it out, whatever, I honestly feel like, the supervisor sets the tone, right? And I feel that the supervisor has to be mindful that they are role models, whether they want to be or not. And so with that said, it's understanding the behavior that you're modeling and the behavior that you're expecting to see in your team. And so if you are modeling behavior that is of poor integrity, your team will be picking up on your behaviors and sort of take that as the expectation for how they should react in certain situations. So I think the more that we see others who are coming forward, and it's not like you're getting sent to the principal's office, but it's just kind of like, oh, you know, Connie, let me tell you what happened today. You know, I mean, I've had situation where like my nursing supervisor be like, hey, Connie, this nurse made a little mistake and she wants to talk to you about it. And like, I'm okay. She walks her in. She's like, I told her, don't be nervous. Right. Like, so the fact that you have like another layer in between that's saying it's okay. You now have two people, two leaders who are saying it's okay. Let's figure it out. Right. And I feel like the more that our staff sees that, the more that they are going to be willing to come forward and say, hey, listen, this is what I did, you know, and whatever that conversation is, at least we know in that conversation that this is an opportunity, one, for me to educate this person because maybe there was a gap. And for two, to figure out how do we make sure that, you know, is it a quick staff meeting, right? Is it for a quick meeting to say, hey, guys, we realize that, you know, this document doesn't have this particular question on it, but it's an important question for an assessment. We're going to be adding this to the document. What do you all think? It doesn't have to be, oh, she made a mistake, so this is what we're going to do. It could be, wow, we identified something. Let's bring it forward and let's get the buy-in from everybody, right? Let's get everyone's involvement in the discussion so that it's not a let's point a finger and now we've got someone to blame. And if there's a negative outcome, you know, there's a name we can tag to that negative outcome, right? Someone's going to be satisfied because someone's responsible for it, you know, like, so for me, I think it's important that we don't create those environments where that's the focus, but it's the environment where we focus on building integrity. We focus on building trusting work relationships and environments where our staff feel comfortable to come forward and say, hey, here's something that I noticed today, or here's something I did today, you know. And many times they come and they say it, and then there's a question. So what should I have done? Right? Which is what I applaud, because it means I think I might have messed up, or maybe even I know I did, right? But now I want to know what's the right way to do it.
Yeah, I like that. Trusting environment cultivates integrity. Guys, that's going to be made on a shirt. You buy Connie's book, it comes with a free shirt. No? Connie, that's like 6 or 7 shirts already, man.
We got to go back and go see all those logos.
Trusting environment cultivates integrity. You know, let me mention something I think that matters. So if I made a mistake as a supervisor, and let's say I know I made a mistake, I feel it, I know I did it. Why am I going to wait until it gets discovered when I can actually build the trust by stepping up before it gets discovered? Because if I wait till it gets discovered, admitting it then is not going to have as much value as admitting it before. And then the people saying, wow, you know, yeah, he may have made a mistake or she may have made a mistake, but they stepped up immediately. You know what I mean? And especially if you know it. Sometimes we may not know we made a mistake, and I understand that, and it's discovered, fine. But sometimes you know it. But our pride, we still defend the choice we made, even though we know we're wrong. And that, to me, makes us look more foolish, in my mind. I think that if you feel or know that you made a mistake, I think the better route you take is admit to it and then build the trust that your people need to have for you. I think trust, again, I would like to think if I can trust you, I can build confidence in you. Mm-hmm. As opposed to you could be great at your job, but I don't trust you. Yeah, you know, I think the trust could supersede that, because if I don't trust the supervisor I'm with, then again, I just don't have that relationship, that respect for that individual. Yeah, you could be great at what you do, but you haven't earned the trust of your people who carry the weight for you. You know what I mean? So you're not going to be doing everything alone. So you could be great and effective at what you do, but without the trust of your people, that's going to run thin real quick. But again, if you trust me, maybe I'm not a perfect supervisor, but if my people trust me, they'll lift me up. and they'll do what they can to make me better at what I do. So yeah, I definitely just kind of breaking it down now. To me, trust is paramount. Trust is paramount because in the end, you mentioned team. Nobody's perfect. We know that, but we can complement each other. And when we feel that it's someone we can trust, then we do whatever we can to make sure that person doesn't fail, whatever level they're at. If they're next to us, if they're above us, it doesn't matter because we're all human, right? So we're all bound to make mistakes. But how do we take our strengths and complement that person's vulnerability? Connie, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
I would just like to say, at the very least, we are working in an environment where we've got a population that we can't trust what they say, right? And, you know, the very least is that we should be able to trust each other. We should be able to trust that we've got each other's backs, that we are going to come forward if there's a mistake. We're not going to intentionally or spitefully put someone else in jeopardy, right? Like, because you mentioned, you know, possible errors that could lead to safety and security concerns. And when we escalate to that level, the reality is that it puts us all in jeopardy. And so the expectation to function at a high level of integrity is something we should be holding ourselves to because the stakes are high. And so I would just say, if you make a mistake, own the mistake. It's kind of what's the worst could happen, right? You know, if it's something illegal, then you're kind of on your own with that. But, you know, we make mistakes. You know, judgment is just that. It's judgment is subjective. And so give yourself some leniency to know that none of us are perfect. We do our best and we make best efforts to do everything the right way. But the reality is that it's okay if you've made a mistake. It's okay to come forward and say, hey, I might have messed up. And so we talk about trust, we talk about integrity. Just be someone that's actually trustworthy and of high integrity because your brothers and sisters are kind of depending on you.
Yeah, and I love this, Connie, because again, my thoughts in closing is if you step up before it's discovered, you're going to teach others to do the same. But again, it only gets strengthened in an environment that allows that. You know, so for those that do it in an environment that doesn't allow it, bravo, very hard to do. But if you have an environment that allows it, looks to cultivate growth, not your pride. And instead, you know, just look at the trust factor. It's okay to make a mistake. But if you could step up before it gets discovered, I just think there's a lot more weight to that, in my opinion. You know, and maybe you have some haters. I mean, nothing's perfect. You know, they're just going to pass judgment regardless. But the one thing they can't say is that you don't man up or you don't woman up or you don't take onus, you don't take responsibility, you don't take accountability. You know what I mean? Usually those are the ones that don't. And sometimes they're upset because they don't have the courage to do what you just did. So, guys, if you haven't, don't forget, Connie's book is on the market, The Cage Was a Cocoon. I got the book, Inmate Manipulation Decoded, and links in the description. And I hope you guys enjoyed the topic. Any comments, feel free. I'm sure me and Connie check it frequently. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. Please stay safe. And ring that bell, Rochelle. Ring that bell.